This is Chuck Schaefer of CXMTV, and I am joined by Martin Schneider, Enterprise Manager, Research Manager for 451 Research. Hello, Martin. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for inviting me into the conversation here.
Absolutely. Happy to have you. Martin, I'd like to start off our conversation by asking you what kind of interest in customer experience you are finding from your customer inquiries and your own research.
You talk about inquiries, but I think that's where we're at right now. I think people are starting to ask questions, and I think they're asking the right questions, which is a good thing. They're reevaluating their application stack, the spend that they've done, and they're looking for ways to modernize, but not necessarily replace. So that's kind of one of the things that we're seeing as people look at social, as they look at mobile, they look at cloud. They're wondering how all these things, as they combine, can refresh, revamp, modernize, whatever you want to call it, their user experiences, both for internal usage of applications, but also for the web and other types of properties that they push out to their end users for things like marketing and customer support. So the questions are coming. I think we're entering a really interesting phase right now where people are going to start doing some really, really cool things using a lot of software and tools. But I think we're really on the front end now. I think kind of social, cloud, and mobile are starting to really prod these types of questions.
Let me dig a little deeper on your comment there. You make the statement that people are planning, they're reviewing their own application stack, which sort of brings us into an ongoing debate as to whether CX strategy is enabled by new CX software. As I'm sure you know, some of the enterprise software vendors are proposing purpose-built application software to support customer experience management. Other enterprise software vendors are saying, no, this is a function of your CRM and your existing application stack. What are your thoughts on that? Is CX going to be CX strategy going to be better enabled by purpose-built CX software, or is that at this point a lot of marketing propaganda?
I think it's a little bit of both, and it always depends on the use case and the customer that's going through this process. Larger, more established companies, like I said, that have spent a lot in the past on big CRM initiatives, big ERP, they have call centers, they have all that stuff, they're going to try and integrate this in new ways. And I think they're going to be using less software in terms of kind of big deployments, but using little things as glue, so to speak, to really modernize that experience. Smaller companies that are growing and that are making their first, kind of foray into a large software deployment around a CX concept, they'll be using those purpose-built type tools. And so I think there's opportunities for both sides of that argument to have a lot of success, and there's a lot of opportunity out there. You just have to recognize, take it back to original CRM, right? It's people, it's process, it's technology. It's not technology first. And the mistake can always be thinking with technology first. You tend to sometimes paint yourself into a corner, make a lot of ill-informed decisions, and spend money that you didn't need to. So I think a serious audit of your processes, your technology, and what you want to get out of any initiative needs to be done beforehand. And then you can take one of those differing paths that you mentioned.
Let me focus on your people comment there. And I agree with you. There's a lot of business leaders who are saying customer experience makes sense, but we've got to think it through. We've got to
Yep.
start with strategy. We learned the lessons from leading with technology in the CRM era for 2 decades, and we don't want to repeat those mistakes. But when you look at the strategy component, it's a little bit more difficult to say who should be the executive sponsor, who should lead that strategy. For CRM, it was often the head of sales.
Yep.
If it was a marketing app, it was the head of marketing. If it was a call center, it was the head of call center. But CX, a customer experience, crosses all of those communication channels.
Yes.
So who do you think is the prime candidate? What's the right role to provide the executive sponsorship to lead the CX strategy?
That's a very interesting question, and one I'm seeing answered with new roles being created. We're seeing more and more large brands and large enterprises create C-level executives that are dedicated to the customer. We're seeing chief customer officer roles in large corporations. And I think for large businesses, that makes sense. And that person really oversees a lot of things, and they have oversight over marketing, of course, because that's where the customer comes in, and obviously support, and a little bit of sales, because you want sales to be a good experience. You don't want to feel sold to. You don't want to feel, that you've got these pushy salespeople just pushing product on you. You want to feel like you're in a consultative experience, again, to use the term, to better your business, especially obviously in B2B, or if it's B2C, you're enriching your lives by making a purchase. And you want to feel that that company's out there to help you. So that chief customer officers, that office is being created. I think in smaller businesses and in more traditional B2B, it's either done by committee, and that's that cross-departmental process considered. Because as you said, with CRM, too often it was kind of thrown into a bucket and the whole technology was given to sales, which was to the detriment of support or marketing or whatever, right? And but now I think the departmental idea of that this is a life cycle, not a thing, that's helping. A lot of times I'm seeing in the smaller businesses, the owner of the business, places where the president is the owner and the founder, those people tend to take that because they have such an emotional connection to their company, their vision, and their dream that they are really good people to communicate that concept to those departments that are going to enforce that customer experience initiative across channels, across touch points, and across the customer life cycle.
Let me take one more question in terms of creating customer experience strategy, and that's in creating measurable goals. With Salesforce automation, the measurable goals were increased revenues.
Yep.
For marketing automation, the goals were increased conversions or increased qualified lead flow or whatever they may be.
Yes.
In the contact center, it was the volume of calls successfully got completed or customer satisfaction. But now for customer experience, we're sort of in this subjective area because the customer's experience is the customer's emotional or perception of their supplier based upon all of their interactions with that organization. So how do you look broad-based? How do you look cross-departmental and take that emotional goal of the customer and translate it into a measurable goal for the company?
Yeah, I think people wrestle with this, and I think it's fair to understand that. But I think if you take the analytical kind of tools that we have now and the ability to measure things that aren't necessarily as subjective as we think, or at least to put subjective things that are very unstructured into a more objective measurement pool. There's things that you can use with kind of social media management and other things like that where you can understand, what is my brand sentiment, and you can do things like that. But again, that really doesn't always relate back to, like you're saying, measurable goals. So what businesses need to do is it's kind of like a roll-up, right? You take a combination of a lot of those factors that you talked about in those kind of silos of things, marketing and support. You look at, how much customer churn are we seeing? And is that sales? Is that support? And a lot of times it's both. How many new customers are coming in through marketing, but also how is marketing and our messaging and the experience that we're doing reaching existing customers and pulling them back in? So you're using web analytics tools and marketing analytics tools, sales analytics, revenue management through the ERP system, and you're kind of rolling that up. And you've got to get broad in terms of saying, like, what are the big numbers, but then also look granular and say, across customer segments that matter to us, what is the customer life cycle, in terms of the value points around that we're trying to hit? Is churn a bad thing all the time? Are we losing profitable customers? That's a bad thing. Are we losing ones that are kind of break even to mildly profitable? Or are we losing our unprofitable customers? And you never want to use those terms, and you use them, very lightly because no one wants to feel like they're not valued. Emotional thing is hard to measure, but there are ways to put it into a context where the reactions that they have and how they go and spread that message in a positive or negative way will affect the bottom line.
Well, with that advice, I think we're at a good break point to conclude our conversation. This is Chuck Schaefer. I've been joined by Martin Schneider, Enterprise Software Research Manager for 451 Research. Martin, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. It was a great conversation.